Susan Lewis and her daughter Jamie moved into a new home in Southern California. It was this nice little house that they referred to as their sanctuary. And shortly after moving in, Susan's new boyfriend, Matt, he moved in as well. Also, Matt had a daughter named Marie, who was the same age as Jamie. One happy family living in this beautiful little home. Everything would change when the peanut butter spilled. A few weeks after moving in, Matt and Jamie and Marie are all outside goofing around in the pool. Susan goes into the kitchen and she sees on the counter that a peanut butter jar had its lid off and had been turned on its side. And oddly enough, the peanut butter seemed to be running out of the jar like it had been melted. And so she reflexively turns around. She's like, Jamie, her daughter, Jamie, get in here. And she's like, did you do this? And Jamie would say that she literally laughed at her mom. Like, why would I do that? She calls in Marie, and Marie too is like, no, I didn't touch the peanut butter. When they come back in the house later that day, they find that there have been cans stacked on each of the steps leading upstairs. They also find that there have been random objects placed all over the house in strange patterns. In the bathroom, they find shampoo bottles stacked on top of one another, hairbrushes arranged in a star pattern on the counter. They open the microwave and find peanut butter jars and other random canned foods and stuffed animals from the kids' rooms in the microwave. The cleaning materials underneath the sink had been pulled out and arranged in a height line from shortest to tallest on the kitchen floor. Also, there were just strange liquids all over the walls. It looked like maybe ketchup or other sauces. They couldn't really tell what it was, but it was sprayed all over the house. There was shampoo on the walls and soap on the walls. And so when Susan and Matt and the girls go inside, they think that someone's invaded their house and they would have seen someone come to their property. So they start filming it. Matt believes it's Jamie, so not his biological daughter. Susan believes it's his daughter, Marie, and it starts this awful conflict between Matt and Susan. This would be the start of what would turn out to be a major fracture in this family, because it just continued to grow. So a week passes and Jamie and Marie are spending some time together in Jamie's room. Marie was sitting at a desk that was next to the bed, and Jamie had a cup of coffee. She puts the cup of coffee down on the desk next to Marie and says, I have to go use the bathroom. She turns around, she walks out, she comes back, and Marie has her head down in her homework. She's not apparently paying attention to anything around her. And Jamie walks in and sees that the cup of coffee that had been sitting on the desk has now been thrown all over her bed. And there's only been one person inside of the room, and that's been Marie. She's like, Marie, what are you doing? Why'd you throw my coffee all over the bed? And Marie pokes her head up and she's like, what are you talking about? And she looks over at the coffee and she's just as surprised as Jamie is. She's like, I didn't do that. Jamie leaves the room to get some bleach. She comes back and she puts the bleach down on her dresser. She had all her drawers open with her clothes out. And she has this bottle of bleach sitting right at the top of this dresser. And so she goes over to the bed, picks up the cup itself that had the coffee. She puts that back on the table, turns around to get the bleach, and the cap has been turned off and it's now dumping bleach all over her clothes. It's just pouring out. Marie had been sitting in the chair the whole time, and Jamie had seen her the whole time. So she screams, Marie looks over, she sees what's going on, she screams. Susan hears this and comes charging in the room and she's like, what's going on? The girls can't describe what's going on, and as they're standing there, a picture frame falls off the wall. And it startles them all. They're looking over, and then another picture falls. They get in the car and actually just leave the house. To this point, Jamie, without saying anything, believed Marie was responsible for placing everything around the house and making a mess in the house. Marie felt the same way about Jamie. Susan was doing the same thing, but for both of the kids. Now, Susan is starting to believe that something else is going on in the house. They actually suggested that we believe our house is haunted. At some point after driving around, Susan and Jamie and Marie go back to the house. Matt has been at work the whole time, so he's not there. When they get back to the house is once again covered in cans all up the stairs, placed in weird orientations on the ground, things in the microwave. The fridge has been opened, all the food's been dumped out. There's liquids all over the wall, and they hadn't been there. And neither had Matt. When Matt came home that night, he was just more convinced that it had to have been Marie or Jamie or even Susan. It causes a huge fight between him and Susan. He's like, why are you letting the kids doing this? Why are you feeding into this? She's saying, you don't get it. There's something wrong with this house. That night, all the power went out in the house, and all they heard all night was doors banging nonstop. And their stove is set to light, so all you hear is that clicking sound. They couldn't get it to turn off. So the next day, Susan would actually go to her close friend and say, here's what's going on, and I have no idea what to do. And her friend would say, maybe you ought to try giving it a peace offering. Maybe this thing in your house, feels like you're intruding. And if you offer some sort of peace offering to demonstrate that you mean no harm, that you want to coexist, that maybe it'll get along with you. Maybe it'll stop. And she really gets into this. She had this little figurine. It was a cat figurine. Susan loved cats, and she figured that a cat represented something she loved. And she puts candles on this table, and she puts the cat right in the middle. And Susan just kind of says, please accept this gift. It's my gift to you. We mean no harm, and we want to coexist. And it just so happens that as they're performing this kind of ritual, Matt came home, and he immediately goes to absolutely not. We're not going to go to trying to interact with this thing. We're not going to act like it's real. It's not real. And so he goes over and he kind of picks up on what they're doing. And, Susan and the girls are telling him, don't do anything, don't touch it. And he takes the figurine and he walks out to the back deck and he throws it onto their backyard. Everybody's attention is towards the backyard. When they all turn around to look at the mantle, Matt thinking he had solved the problem, there is a figurine, an identical one of the cat that's sitting on the table again. They all gasp. They can't believe it. And it doesn't make any sense. They watched Matt throw the figurine. Matt doesn't care. Picks it up and throws it on the ground and smashes it right then and there. That night, after everybody finally fell asleep, Jamie wakes up in the middle of the night and goes down into the kitchen to get a snack. When she goes in there, she sees written all over the walls, everywhere, is the word cat. Everywhere. And she immediately runs upstairs. She gets her mom, she gets Matt and Marie. Matt looks at Jamie and says, you're the one that found this. You did this. Susan comes to defend Jamie and says, you're the one, Matt, that smashed the cat figurine. There's no wonder this is happening. And so this horrible fight happens where they aren't seeing what's actually going on. They're just seeing red and fighting with each other. Meanwhile, they're blatantly being haunted. In addition to cat being written everywhere, the house had been completely ransacked. I mean, everything's been dumped out of drawers. Everywhere that you could make a mess, there had been a mess made. And no one woke up to it. And as they move some things aside in the kitchen, they find what looks to be a huge footprint. It is not Matt's footprint. It's certainly not one of the girls' footprints. At this point, the kids are getting very withdrawn. They don't want to be in the house, so Marie would end up staying in her room all day. Jamie would do the same thing. Matt and Susan weren't talking. There was just nothing being done to correct the situation, and everybody was so upset and angry with each other. It was just a worst case scenario. So in the last couple of weeks that they ever stayed at this house, because they would leave, two major events occurred. The first one happened when Marie was home alone. She's sitting in the living room watching TV, and at some point the TV starts turning off and on. So off on, off on, off on, and she knows that something bad's about to happen. And the TV finally just turns off. She can't get it on. She reaches for the remote. The remote flies off the table. And now she's just sitting there frozen because she knows that something's in the house with her. She watches as the rocking chair right in front of her just starts to rock back and forth, as if the person or thing that had pulled away the remote had walked over and sat down in the rocking chair and was now looking at her rocking back and forth. Marie is looking at the rocking chair as all the pictures on the walls just start one by one falling off the wall. She takes her camera in her hand and kind of turns it and just starts taking pictures of the room before running out of the room to get her phone, where she calls Susan, she calls her dad, she calls everybody. She's screaming into the phone, you gotta get here, something's going on. And Susan flies home, Jamie flies home. Marie says, I took pictures. There are these weird orbs of light that are very clearly in the room with her, that are moving around the room. She managed to get a couple pictures of them, and they're just totally out of this world. At this point, Matt is convinced that there's something paranormal happening in the house. And so Matt decides, well, I don't know who we call for this, but I think you call the church. And the best he could do was get a pastor to come over and pray with them before leaving and saying, we can't help you. And finally, the second major event that occurred in those final 2 weeks happened to Jamie when she was home alone. Jamie was in her room and she starts hearing pounding on her door. She started filming this pounding on her door. And at some point she knows she has to go into the hall. And so she goes over to the door. As soon as her hand would go near the doorknob, the pounding on the other side of the door would stop. And so she didn't open the door, and she went back onto her bed, and she just sat there in the fetal position for 3 hours, listening to something smashing nonstop into the door. At some point, the banging stops, and after a few minutes of the banging being done, she thinks this is her chance to escape the house. She opens the door, and there's no one there. But the door on the outside, where the knocking had been happening, there's this huge dent and divot in the door. On the ground in the hall is a pile of utensils. This thing had been using tools to try to open the door. Next door to her room was a bathroom, and the bathroom door did not have a doorknob on it. You basically just pushed it shut. But there was a space for a doorknob that you could actually look through. And she noticed in the bathroom that the light was flickering. And she thought, I think it's in there. And she decides she's going to try to trap this thing. So she goes to her desk where she had some string. She goes back over and loops the string through this hole in the door and leans back and pulls the door shut, thinking she's trapped this thing inside. As soon as she does, she starts feeling resistance on the door. Someone is pulling back. And at some point, the string gets cut and she falls back into her room. At which point, the bathroom door swings open and she says, I'm about to come face to face with something out of my nightmares. But before she could see this thing come out of the bathroom, her bedroom door slams shut, and she hears the rustling of pans and tools and metal clinking against each other right outside her door. She knows this thing is interacting with all those tools and...
Welcome all. I am here, demonologist expert, Allison Henry. It's my pleasure today to come help you with your issues. So let's start. First of all, thank you, Mr. Poltergeist, for opening the door and being a gentleman. Unlike these other people, they didn't even hear me. They were too busy fighting over what you were doing to them. You know, I get it. They're upset and like you're just kind of like cowering in the corner, afraid. I get it. And that sucks. I'm sorry. Also, you know, I know one of the biggest things that happened is, you know, in the beginning you were stacking up a bunch of canned goods and their staircase, just merely trying to show them what they had so they don't forget about it and can, you know, eat the food that they don't look at anymore and take, you know, take account of that and start using it up because, you know, they weren't using it and they weren't looking at it in the cabinet clearly, and you just wanted to help them out. Hey, they got this food too. Here you go, just so you don't forget. You know, I get that. And then, you know, with the whole, but you can't, and then with the peanut butter and trying to make them a sweet treat. I know they were unhappy about it and they got upset about it, but it doesn't mean they retaliate and throw coffee and bleach on the upholstery and scare people. You just can't do it that way. I'm sorry. I know that hurt your feelings. I get it, bud. I get it. I understand. Like, trust me. But you can't handle it that way. And also, you know, you guys need to say an apology to him because he's really hurt. He's really sad that you guys messed with him. All he really wanted was a cat. You know, he said that he wanted a cat. And I know he wanted a cat, but he said he wanted a cat. And then you guys get him a cat figurine, and it ends up being thrown out. And it's not fair to him, because he went and got it back every single time for you guys, and you guys just got more upset about it, and then you broke it, and that really hurt him. And, you know, I know that was not the right way to retaliate. You don't write on the walls, okay, with condiments. It's not the way to do it. We're going to talk about this on the way. My idea is let's go get you a cat. Let's figure this out. Let's get this fixed. Let's do something about it, okay? Let's go do that. But no accidents on the way. And you gotta promise me that you'll coexist with them now, okay? And they'll do better. I will make sure that they think about what they did as we're gone. Thank you. Another case solved.